Welcome to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their perspective, offering you gentle reminders and fresh insights for your own journey through life. Today, I'm joined by Russell Van Brocklen, known as the Dyslexia Professor. He's someone who sees potential where others might see struggle, transforming daily reading frustrations into confident wins for students facing dyslexia. His work is rooted in hope and the belief that every child has their own unique way of learning. Let's settle in and hear the words that guide USS mission to help families move from guesswork to real understanding. Tell me your name, a little bit about yourself, and your favorite quote.
Okay. My name is Russell Van Brocklen. About me is I have the worst case of dyslexia people have said they've ever seen. I entered auditing law school with a first grade reading and writing level. And after about 3 weeks, I could read the law school text better than any of my classroom peers. It finally helped me really focus my thinking, and the brutality of law school that requires you to think very sharply. It just all came together for me. I can recall my second day in contracts. The teacher called on me, and they use in the United States in law school something called the Socratic method,
Okay.
where if you don't know the answer, the teacher literally tries to make you look like an idiot. So he started, it's a nasty way, especially when you're just starting out. So he asked me a question, I answered, and then I debated. Everything just seemed to slow down, and everything just came together in that time frame. So we argued back and forth for 15 minutes. He said you couldn't be any more correct, then you had to move on to the next case. The students that I was with that ended up finishing law school, they said at the end they couldn't do what I did the second day. So at that point, what I wanted to do is I wanted to solve reading and writing for students that were like me, who tried really hard, who were bright, who really just wanted to overcome things. That's where I really, that quote from Disney, it's fun doing the impossible. That's what I set out to do. So I want you to imagine this was in the thousands, the '00 decade. And at the time, the best dyslexic college out there, and still is Landmark College. But at that time, they weren't particularly hard on the students that they let in. If you were dyslexic and wanted to go to college, they would accept you. Now it's different. If you're not a legitimate college student material, they won't accept you. So they had a 2-year program to send students on to a 4-year college. And even if you spent 3 years there, their success rate was only about 25 to 33%.
Okay.
Cost 100 to 150,000. So again, going back to Disney's quote, it's fun doing the impossible. Working through the State University of New York and the New York State Education Department and the State University Research Foundation, what I did is I looked at a book called Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz, best known book in dyslexia.
Okay.
And for the first time, what it showed was the brain scans. And what it showed is the back part of the dyslexic brain had almost no neural activity. The front part was about 2.5 times overactive. And it said articulation followed by word analysis in the front part of the brain. So I looked at that, and I found out that dyslexics tend to excel in graduate school, but suffered much worse everything else. And I was like, okay, so what's the writing assessment test for going into graduate school? The graduate rector exam writing assessment test. So I created a curriculum, got it approved at SUNY Center at Buffalo under Professor James Collins. And then I took it to New York State, and we tested it out in New York State and eventually funded this for a multi-year study. We did kind of cheat. We only accepted students that met 4 criteria. They're highly intelligent, highly motivated, college-bound with excellent family support. And we did use, the school district was the Averill Park Central School District, and we did use their very best special ed teacher in the high school. What happened? The students started the program. It was 1 class period a day for the school year. They generally started off in the 0 percentile. Their reading and writing skills were in the middle school level. And we're giving them a test for college graduates. At the end, they were scoring between the 30th and the 70th percentile. They all went out. Yep, the 30, and they did exactly as the GRE predicted. They graduated with GPAs between 2.5 to 3.6. No accommodations. Cost to New York State under $900 a student. So we had 100% success rate. Landmark was 25 to 33%. They were 100 to 150,000 over 2 to 3 years. We were 1 year, 1 class period a day for less than 1% of that budget. That's kind of fun doing the impossible.
Yeah. For me, I'm trying to wrap my head what is the impossible? I mean, some things are hard, but they're not exactly what qualifies to be put in the realm of, oh, this is the impossible and this is what I want to do?
Well, I want you to think about just really hard full professors at a major research university. What happens if you go to a major research university as a college freshman with an eighth grade writing skill? You're done. You're going to flunk everything unless they want to just fluff up the grades for your self-esteem and you get away with a couple of D's, but you're done. But we go to the GRE writing assessment. We test the writing skills they're supposed to develop over a 4-year college career. We have them score in the average range, 30th to 70th percentile, and they go and they score grades between 2.5 and 3.6, no accommodations. All right. They can read, they can analyze, they can think. Here's what the difference is. As a dyslexic, we're always going to read slower. We're going to write slower, but we can think in orders of magnitude faster than our gen ed peers. Remember, front part of the brain, 2.5 times the neural activity. I simply took articulation followed by word analysis, and I applied it to where dyslexics excel, which is in graduate school. And then what I found is specifically where I learned about this is when I was taking my property, I remember property law school class, they would give you a question, and everybody knows everything, but you're supposed to read it for 3 to 5 minutes to try to think how they're going to fool you and then answer. I read it much slower, but I thought for less than a second because I could process the information so rapidly. And that's the skill that I transferred over to other dyslexics.
Yeah.
That was the impossible. 3x the performance at less than 1% of the cost.
Now that you tell the story, it sounds so sweet and interesting, like as if there was no roadblock, no obstacles. Can you zoom in on the obstacles of doing this impossible? What was it like? What were the roadblocks? Where were the challenges? Because it's the impossible. There's a reason they call it the impossible, because it's hard to do.
The simple idea that you were going to take high school juniors who were reading and writing just a complete mess and then have it transformed to the graduate level. Let's go into something more specific.
Yep.
The spelling and grammar. And just remember, these evaluations weren't done by some overstretched graduate student. It was done by a State University of New York distinguished professor in psychology, basically the best professor they had in Western New York in psychology. And the spelling and grammar pre-test was a disaster. On the post-test, it was clean at the graduate school level. And the teacher spent almost no time on spelling and grammar.
Okay.
Now, if you go, for example, to Windward, it's one of the top dyslexic schools in New York City. It's $70-some-odd thousand a year. Full time, they take 4 to 5 years to correct the concern, the reading, writing concern, and then they send students back to the schools they came from. It takes 4 to 5 years. They spend forever doing homework assignments, classroom periods to get that spelling and grammar up. And that's to the end of the high school level. This was one class period a day for the school year. The teacher spent almost no time on it, and it auto-corrected.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay. So instead of literally spending, $100+, $200+ just on the spelling and grammar portion, all right, over those many years, because that's a major part of what they focus on, this auto-corrected. So again, going back to Disney, why it's fun doing the impossible, how could that be done? Well, if you ask a dyslexic this question, this is one thing that almost none of the other dyslexic researchers know about. You ask a dyslexic, in your speciality, in your area of extreme interest and ability, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? Yes. So what do? We force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. And once you do that, a lot of the spelling, grammatical errors start to self-correct. So the idea is, how can we not only produce a much better result than what is typically done in even the best dyslexic schools, but do it at a fraction of the time and a small fraction of the cost. I think that qualifies as the impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But remember, that was only for the elite students. But then how do we go about and making this available to everybody? Because we tried the program
It
with
works.
typical students, and it was a mitigated disaster, unmitigated disaster. So how do we
Really?
switch it over?
Wait.
Well, you got to. Well,
Wait.
we're taking these high school kids and we're giving them stuff for graduates, for people going into grad school. It assumes a college education. They haven't finished high school. So the best and brightest could do it, but not everybody. So to make that switch over, what we did is I went back to, again, here's the book, here's the science, brain scans. Instead of articulation followed by word analysis, flipped it over. Word analysis followed by articulation. The next thing, so we had to do that, but that wasn't enough. So we had to push that down to step 3. We first had to start off with number 1, the kid's speciality, what they're really, really, really interested in.
Yeah.
So, for example, my most successful case, I never saw it before. I'll never see it again. Here's this massive book. I gave it to a 10-year-old named Casey. He was end of 5th grade, reading at a 2nd grade reading level. That monster's at the 10th grade to 1st year college level, depending on who you ask. I gave her a simple process, which I'll discuss in a second. 6 months later, she's reading that entire book. She knows every word in that book. It was 3 hours a night, 6-7 days a week for 6 months. So what we did is we started off with word analysis followed by articulation. But before that, we had to move up to what they're really interested in, their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. Then we moved it down. Instead of teaching from the general to the specific, we taught from the specific to the general. Because dyslexics, if you ask, for example, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech have in the 1960s civil rights movement? Dyslexics have nothing to hold on to. It's just scatterbrained. We think too quickly. But if we ask what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, well, with that, we have a starting point that forces us to think in a linear manner. Okay? So we do that, and then we come out with a word analysis. What I basically have students do is we'll say, oh, who's the hero? What does the hero want to do? You take that sentence they write out. What's the action word? A word that'll push the hero towards the general goal. And what's the most important word? Decide which way you want to go. And that's what I call our base universal theme. Then we go to the thesaurus and we try to find a definition that meets what's in your head as close as possible. So we go to word after word, have them type out the word, go to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, type out their definition, and we find the word that best matches in their head that's much more specific. And we find the ultimate villain, the villain who can best prevent the hero from from achieving the hero's goals. Once you do that, now you can have an organized discussion, come up with multiple reasons. Each reason we turn into a universal theme, and then we find a precise quote from the book, and then we discuss it using a specific formula. All right? So now you have quotes in all your paragraphs. As students advance, they use more and more quotes. And with that, and as they constantly go through a base universal theme to find their advanced universal theme, they're typing out the word and the definition. You do that a certain number of times, you know that word, you know that definition. Over a course of about 3 to 6 months, you develop a vocabulary of hundreds of evolved words. Now, that's a base to see your reading level jump multiple grade levels. And the kids can do that at home with minimum instructions from their parents. I spoke to Casey 15 minutes a week. Now, that's by far my most successful case at that age. But when people tell me it can't be done, I'm like, a 10-year-old figured this out and did it on her own. She jumps 8 grade levels in 6 months. And you're telling me it can't be done?
It's been done
With tens
countless
of
times.
thousands of dollars? I'm sorry, what was that?
You're telling me it can be done when we've done it countless times. You need to be.
I have done this for 20 years. I've taught hundreds of teachers how to do this in New York City and New Jersey. And it can be done. It's not that hard. And it's very inexpensive. Here's the problem in my field. There was a guy called Dr. Orton who actually came up with the original solution for dyslexia. He passed away in 1948. His partner Gillingham passed away in the 1950s. Hasn't changed really all that much since then. This book came out in '03. We now have the science. We now know the brain. Okay. They're not updating it based on this critical research that came out 22 years ago. That's my field. So, and why did I like Walt Disney? Every indication that people tell me is Walt Disney was dyslexic. Okay. I have taught his biography. His biography is Walt Disney, The Triumph of the American Imagination. There's two universal themes in there. So if you ever go to Disney World and you walk in and you say, this is the most magical place on earth, it's based on two universal themes. One is far more powerful than the other one. So let me just get that for you. Here's that book. This is my most popular one when I work with kids. All right. By far the most popular one.
Take the book step back a bit, like.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, imagine trying. How long do you think it takes me to get a student through this if we start when they're 10 or 11?
Let's say.
No, they can't read.
Ooh.
They got to understand a book designed for high school seniors. This can take a couple of years. Okay. Now, remember what I said. Just so so you're understanding what we're looking at here. Windward is $70,000 a year in the Upper East Side in New York City. 4 to 5 years. If you enter in fourth grade, at the end of 8th or 9th grade, they will send you back to your old school at $70,000 a year for 4 to 5 years. I'm doing this part-time, a couple of sessions a week, and I'm getting kids to go through this and to tell me what those two universal themes are. And then once they understand them, there's a book called The Craft of Research. It came out in the mid-90s by the University of Chicago because their PhD students did not know how to write research papers. Now in its 5th edition, it's for really advanced high school kids. And college professors expect students to know how to apply that when they go to college. Context, problem, solution. And the solution is they actually want to learn something when they pick up the paper. I've now dropped that to 4th grade, not high school.
4th grade?
Yes. We do the context in 4th and 5th grade, problem in middle school, solution in high school. So I want you to imagine this. Imagine you're a high school advanced placement English teacher for 25 years, and you're teaching Romeo and Juliet, and you got 20 advanced placement students.
Yeah.
How often do you think that teacher learns anything from reading a student's paper? Virtually never. I've now reduced it to a formula where they will learn something in every paper, every time. Now, that innovation is not going to change the world. It's worth about a minute or two discussion in a graduate class. But it can be applied to a 5-paragraph essay where the teacher goes, I never thought of that before. Every time they read a paper.
Yeah. Wow.
Without fail.
Yeah, Russell, thank you so much for sharing this story. And one of the things I just noticed so far is the fact there are so many impossibles in the world. It's fun to do the impossible if the impossible is something you deeply care about. And you mentioned earlier before we started the call that you're dyslexic, and so it's not just, oh, this is a problem. It's more like, I have this problem, and let me solve it for other people too. And so it became something that was like core of the heart. And now you've been helping people for the past 20 years. Well, thank you so much for sharing this story.
Thank you. And I hope what I showed for dyslexics also works for gen ed students, normal students.
Okay.
The only difference is the dyslexic tends to go a lot deeper. The gen ed kids go a lot faster. Okay.
Yeah.
So it works for us, works for everybody.
Okay. For people that would love to learn more about this, right? They would love to learn more about you and what you do. Where can they do?
Just go to dyslexiaclasses.com and we're right there.
Okay. Once again, thank you so much for being such an amazing and for sharing this story. And this story is going to stick with me for a long.
Thanks for having me, Wisdom. And as I said, if you apply these steps, your wisdom will increase.
No pun intended. Yeah, thank you so much.
Unintended.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see what you did. Thank you so much, Russell. I'm really glad that we were able to have the meeting, and thanks. You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who loved the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatable.wisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.